For many travelers, the first image that comes to mind when they think about Bali is a place filled with open rice terraces, quiet beaches, peaceful temples, and a slower pace of life that feels very different from the busy cities they left behind. For years, the island developed a reputation as a destination where visitors could escape crowded urban environments and experience a version of tropical paradise that felt both accessible and surprisingly authentic. Even people who had never visited often carried a mental picture of Bali as a place where relaxation came naturally and where space seemed easier to find than in many other parts of the world. That is why so many travelers arrive today and immediately find themselves asking the same question after only a few days on the island: why does Bali feel more crowded than ever before? The answer is not as simple as saying that more people are visiting, because tourism alone does not fully explain the experience many travelers describe after arriving. What people are often reacting to is the combination of growing visitor numbers, expanding development, changing travel habits, and the concentration of activity into a relatively small number of highly popular areas. The result is an island that can feel dramatically different depending on where you stay, when you visit, and what kind of experience you are expecting to find. Understanding why Bali feels more crowded requires looking at several changes that have gradually reshaped the visitor experience over the last decade. Many returning travelers describe a sense of surprise when they revisit locations they remember from previous trips and discover that those same places now look and feel very different. Roads that once felt relatively quiet may now experience regular traffic throughout much of the day, while areas that previously attracted only a small number of visitors can suddenly appear on social media feeds around the world and become major tourist attractions almost overnight. Restaurants, beach clubs, cafes, and accommodation options have expanded rapidly to meet growing demand, creating landscapes that often feel much busier than travelers expected. For some visitors, this growth represents progress and convenience, while for others it feels like a departure from the Bali they remember. One reason the change feels so noticeable is that modern travel trends often concentrate large numbers of people into the same locations at the same time. Travelers frequently arrive with lists of famous beaches, popular cafes, scenic viewpoints, and well-known photo locations that they have already seen hundreds of times online before even boarding their flight. Because millions of people are consuming similar content, many end up visiting the same destinations during the same hours of the day. The crowding that results is often less about the entire island becoming full and more about specific locations absorbing enormous amounts of attention. Social media has played a particularly important role in shaping this experience because it has dramatically changed the way people discover destinations. A viewpoint, waterfall, cafe, or beach that might once have remained known primarily to locals and repeat visitors can now become internationally famous within a matter of weeks if enough content creators begin sharing images and videos from the location. Travelers naturally become curious and want to experience these places for themselves, which increases visitor numbers even further. Over time, the popularity of a small number of highly visible locations can create the impression that the entire island has become overcrowded. Another factor is that Bali has become far more accessible to international travelers than it was in previous decades. Improved flight connectivity, expanded tourism infrastructure, and greater global awareness have introduced the island to millions of potential visitors who may not have previously considered Indonesia as a travel destination. As Bali's reputation has grown, it has attracted travelers from a wider variety of countries, age groups, and travel styles than ever before. This broader appeal has helped fuel tourism growth while simultaneously increasing pressure on the island's most popular areas. The experience can feel especially dramatic for travelers visiting areas such as Canggu, Seminyak, and parts of Ubud, because these locations have become central hubs for tourism, hospitality, dining, and digital nomad culture. Visitors often discover vibrant communities filled with cafes, restaurants, co-working spaces, fitness centers, and entertainment options that simply did not exist at the same scale years ago. While many people enjoy the convenience and energy these developments provide, they also contribute to the feeling that some areas are busier than ever. The popularity of these hubs continues attracting more visitors, which further reinforces the cycle. What surprises many first-time visitors is that crowding is not distributed evenly across the island. Bali is much larger and more diverse than many travelers initially assume, Yet a significant percentage of tourism activity remains concentrated within a relatively limited number of regions. This means one traveler may leave Bali describing overwhelming crowds, while another returns home talking about peaceful landscapes, quiet villages, and uncrowded beaches. Both experiences can be completely accurate depending on where they spent their time. The first major shift in perspective often occurs when travelers realize that Bali itself has not changed as much as the way people move through it. Many visitors now travel according to highly optimized itineraries built around famous attractions, viral locations, and recommended experiences that appear repeatedly across travel content online. As a result, thousands of people often arrive at the same destination with remarkably similar plans and expectations. The feeling of crowding therefore becomes closely connected to travel behavior rather than simply population numbers. This pattern becomes particularly noticeable around sunrise and sunset locations that have gained popularity online. Travelers naturally want to capture beautiful views during the most visually appealing times of day, which often means large numbers of people arrive simultaneously. A location that feels busy during a 1-hour period may feel surprisingly peaceful only a short time later. Yet because so many visitors experience these peak periods, they leave with the impression that the destination remains crowded all day. Transportation also contributes significantly to the perception of crowding because traffic is one of the first things many travelers encounter after arriving. Increased development, growing visitor numbers, and expanding local populations have placed additional pressure on roads that were never originally designed to handle today's traffic volumes. Even relatively short journeys can sometimes take longer than visitors expect, particularly in heavily developed tourism areas. The time spent sitting in traffic often reinforces the feeling that Bali has become busier than before. For many travelers, traffic becomes the most visible symbol of Bali's growth because it affects daily experiences in ways that are difficult to ignore. A journey that appears short on a map may require considerably more time than expected during busy periods, altering schedules and changing how people explore the island. Visitors who imagined effortless movement between attractions sometimes find themselves adjusting plans around transportation realities. This can create a stronger perception of crowding than visitor numbers alone would suggest. The second major shift occurs when travelers begin understanding that Bali's popularity is actually a reflection of its success rather than a sign of decline. People continue visiting because the island still offers many of the qualities that made it famous in the first place, including beautiful scenery, rich culture, welcoming hospitality, excellent food, diverse accommodation, and a wide variety of experiences. The challenge is that millions of other people recognize these same qualities and are equally eager to experience them. Popular destinations rarely become crowded by accident. At the same time, Bali continues evolving to accommodate changing visitor expectations. New hotels, restaurants, wellness retreats, beach clubs, and tourism services appear regularly as businesses respond to demand from travelers seeking different experiences. Some visitors welcome these additions because they increase comfort and convenience, while others feel they alter the character of places they once considered more traditional or relaxed. This difference in expectations often shapes whether someone views development positively or negatively. Many repeat visitors eventually discover that timing plays an enormous role in shaping their experience. Visiting during peak travel periods can produce a dramatically different impression compared with traveling during quieter seasons when visitor numbers are lower and attractions feel less busy. Even within the same week, different times of day can completely change how crowded a location feels. Travelers who adjust schedules strategically often experience a very different version of Bali from those who follow the busiest patterns. The most interesting realization often comes when travelers begin exploring beyond the island's most famous hotspots. Areas that receive far less attention online frequently offer a slower pace, different landscapes, and a sense of space that many people assume no longer exists in Bali. The island's popularity has not eliminated these experiences, but it has made them slightly less obvious to visitors who remain focused on the most heavily promoted destinations. In many cases, they are still available for travelers willing to venture beyond the most familiar routes. This leads to the third major shift in perspective, because many experienced visitors eventually conclude that the question is not whether Bali has become crowded but where and how crowding is being experienced. The island can feel intensely busy in certain areas while remaining surprisingly peaceful in others located only a short distance away. Understanding this distinction often transforms the entire travel experience. Instead of searching for the Bali that existed years ago, travelers begin discovering the Bali that exists today. What makes the conversation particularly interesting is that nearly every generation of travelers believes they arrived just after Bali's best years had already passed. Visitors have been expressing similar concerns about growth, tourism, and development for decades, even as new travelers continue arriving and falling in love with the island for the first time. This suggests that part of the discussion is not only about crowding but also about expectations and nostalgia. People often compare current experiences to idealized memories rather than to present realities. Despite all the changes, Bali continues attracting visitors from around the world because it offers a combination of culture, scenery, affordability, hospitality, and variety that remains difficult to replicate elsewhere. Travelers can still find dramatic coastlines, beautiful temples, vibrant food scenes, lush landscapes, and memorable experiences across the island. The difference is that discovering these experiences sometimes requires a little more flexibility, planning, and exploration than it once did. Those willing to adapt often find that many of Bali's most appealing qualities remain very much alive. That is why Bali feels more crowded than ever before. Growing tourism, concentrated travel patterns, social media influence, expanding development, and transportation challenges have combined to create an experience that often feels busier than the image many travelers carry in their minds before arrival. Yet the story is not simply one of crowding or decline, because the island continues offering remarkable experiences for those willing to look beyond the most obvious locations. The real surprise is that many travelers who arrive worried about the crowds eventually discover that the Bali they were searching for never disappeared at all, they simply had to look a little further to find it. And for travelers who do venture beyond the most famous hotspots, another question often emerges almost immediately, because some are beginning to wonder whether another destination in Southeast Asia is following the exact same path that transformed Bali over the last decade.